The first time my stepmother called me the help in front of a room full of people, I was carrying my father's birthday cake with both hands. It was a sheet cake from the grocery store on Maple Avenue, chocolate with white frosting, because that was the only kind he ever asked for. My name was written on the little order sticker taped to the box. I had paid for it, picked it up, and driven it across town with the air conditioner blasting so the icing roses would not slide. But when I stepped through the front door of my father's house, Lorraine clapped her hands like I had come through the service entrance. "Oh good," she said, loud enough for the tables nearest the door to turn. "Mara's here. Put that in the kitchen, honey. Family photos are in 5. I stopped with the cake balanced against my ribs. My father was across the room in a gray suit he hated, standing under a banner that said, "Happy 60th, Ray." He saw me. I know he saw me, because his face changed the way it always did when Lorraine cut at me in public. His mouth opened a little, then closed. He touched the knot of his tie like it had suddenly tightened. Beside him, my half-sister, Bethany, was fixing her lipstick in the black screen of her phone. My half-brother, Mason, was laughing with 2 cousins who had not spoken to me since Christmas 3 years before, when I made the mistake of asking why my mother's old casserole dish was being used as a planter on Lorraine's porch. I could have set the cake down and left. I want to say that now because it sounds strong. The truth is, I stood there and smiled. Not because I was weak. Because every person in that room knew the script, and if I stepped out of it too early, I would be the problem before I even got a chance to breathe. "Sure," I said. "Where do you want it?" Lorraine pointed toward the swinging kitchen door without looking at me. Her nails were bright coral, the same color as the roses on the cake. "Ask someone back there. They'll show you." Back there meant 2 teenage boys from the church, a woman unloading aluminum trays of chicken, and my 8-year-old niece, Poppy, sitting on an overturned milk crate with her patent leather shoes kicked off. Poppy was Bethany's daughter, all elbows and serious eyes, and she was the only person in that family who still ran toward me when I walked into a room. She looked up from the floor and whispered, "Aunt Mara, Grandma said you weren't in the picture because you were running late." I set the cake on the counter carefully. The frosting had dented where my thumb pressed the cardboard. "I guess I made it just in time to miss it," I said. I meant it as a joke, but Poppy's face tightened like she understood more than a child should. That was the thing about Lorraine's house. The cruelty never arrived wearing a monster mask. It came as an instruction. It came with honey on the end of it. "Move that chair, Mara. Take the burnt piece, Mara. Let your brother sit up front, Mara. Don't make your father choose, Mara." I was 34 years old, a surgical nurse with 12-hour shifts and a mortgage, and a life that did not require permission from any of them. Still, inside that room, I could feel myself shrink to the girl who learned to eat fast because if I reached for seconds, Lorraine would say, "Some children think full means first." My father married Lorraine when I was 10, 11 months after my mother died. People in our town said he was lucky to find a woman willing to take on a grieving man and a quiet little girl. Lorraine liked that version. She polished it until everyone could see their own reflection in it. She told people she raised me as her own, usually while handing me a trash bag or reminding me that Bethany and Mason were still growing and needed the nicer things. She never hit me. That mattered to people who did not live there. She did smaller work. She taught me that a family could make a place for you at the table and still expect you to stand while everyone else ate. I was putting plastic candles into the cake when the kitchen door swung open, and my father came in. For 1 second, I saw him before he noticed me looking. Older than he let me see, one hand pressed flat against his chest pocket, his breath shallow from crossing the room. Then he smiled too quickly. "There's my girl," he said. It landed in me the way it always did, with warmth first and anger right behind it. His girl, but not enough to say so out there. His girl, but only in the kitchen. "Hey, Dad." I wiped frosting off my thumb with a napkin. "Happy birthday." He looked at the cake, then at the swinging door behind him. "Your mother used to do the candles crooked on purpose," he said softly. Said perfect cakes made people nervous. I froze with the little blue candle in my hand. He almost never mentioned my mother when Lorraine was within earshot. Her name had been treated like a draft in the house, something everybody felt but nobody admitted was coming under the door. Before I could answer, Lorraine pushed in with a stack of paper plates against her hip. Her smile vanished for half a second when she saw us standing close. Then it came back, brighter and harder. "Ray, everybody's waiting. Mara, after the song, can you cut and serve?" The caterer's girl disappeared. I'm not the caterer's girl, I said. It came out calm, which surprised me more than it surprised her. My father looked down at the floor. Lorraine blinked once, then laughed like I had made a cute mistake. Of course not, sweetheart. Don't be sensitive today. It's your father's birthday. She pushed the plates into my hands before I could refuse. The top plate had a smear of barbecue sauce across the rim. We all pitch in. When we came out, the room had gone into that strange party hush before a song starts. Someone dimmed the lights. Mason shouted, "About time." And a few people laughed. I carried the cake to the long table under the banner while Lorraine walked beside me, waving people closer. "Now, we need the real family up here," she called. "Ray, Bethany, Mason, Poppy, come on. Mara, you can stand by the cake so we don't set the tablecloth on fire." The laughter was bigger that time. Not cruel from everyone, maybe. Some people just laugh when a confident woman tells them something is funny. But the sound still moved through my body like cold water. Poppy stepped out from beside Bethany and reached for my hand. Lorraine caught her shoulder. "No, baby, with Mommy." Poppy's fingers closed around empty air. That tiny motion hurt worse than the joke. I looked at my father. He looked at me, then at the people holding up phones, then at Lorraine. His face crumpled with something I wanted to believe was shame. "Mara," he said, barely loud enough for me to hear. Lorraine leaned toward him without turning her head. "Ray." One word. A warning dressed as his name. He swallowed whatever else he had. So, I stood beside the cake while they sang to him like I was part of the furniture. The candles threw small, shaking lights across the frosting. When my father bent to blow them out, he did not close his eyes to make a wish. He looked straight at me. Then, just before the room clapped, he mouthed two words I could not hear. After the song, while everyone surged forward for cake and plates, my father caught my wrist. His grip was light, almost scared. "Don't leave yet," he said. "Please. After this, I need to tell you something before Lorraine does." My father's fingers were cold around my wrist, and that scared me more than Lorraine's voice ever had. Ray was a warm-handed man. Even when he disappointed me, even when he let silence do his dirty work, his hands had always been warm. But standing in that hallway with the birthday candles still smoking behind us and frosting on the knife in my other hand, he held on like somebody had opened a door under his feet. "What did you say?" I asked him. His eyes moved toward the dining room. Lorraine was laughing too loudly in there, the laugh she used when she wanted everyone to understand she was in charge of the air. Bethany said something about pictures. Mason asked where the lighter went. Normal party noises, but my father flinched at each one like they were countdown numbers. He swallowed. "Blue bowl." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. Then the words landed in the place he'd aimed them. My mother's blue glass mixing bowl, the one with the tiny chip on the rim shaped like a crescent moon. She had used it for pancake batter, potato salad, boxed brownies, everything. After she died, I used to stand on a kitchen chair and run my finger around that chip, because it was one of the few things in the house Lorraine didn't immediately replace. I looked past him toward the kitchen. "What about it?" He rubbed his thumb against my wrist, then let go, as if he had just realized he was holding me. "Lorraine found it in the basement last week. That bowl was gone." "I know. You told me it broke." His face folded in on itself. Not dramatically, just enough for me to see the old cowardice in a new shape. "I told you what made the house quiet. That should have been the moment I walked out. I can say that now. I can make it clean when I tell it. But in that hallway, I was still 34 and 12 at the same time, still holding a cake knife, still listening for my stepmother's heels on hardwood." "What is she doing with it?" I asked. Ray's mouth opened and nothing came out. Then he said, "She's giving it to Bethany tonight." The party behind us seemed to tilt. Not because of the bowl by itself. Objects are only objects until somebody uses them to tell you where you belong. Lorraine had made me carry plates, carry cake, carry smiles. Now she wanted me in the room while she handed my mother's bowl to her own daughter, and called it family history. She didn't want the bowl. She wanted my face while I lost it. She said it would be meaningful, Dad said, rushing now. Like speed could turn his words into something less ugly. "For the girls. For Poppy someday. She said you don't cook, and Bethany hosts Thanksgiving, and—" "Stop." He stopped. I looked at him carefully. "Did you tell her no?" His eyes shined, but he did not answer. That silence was the oldest sentence in our family. I had heard it at school banquets when Lorraine introduced me as Ray's daughter from before. I had heard it when I paid for my own nursing books because Lorraine said adult children shouldn't drain a household. I had heard it when I came home after a double shift and found my childhood bedroom turned into a wrapping paper closet. Ray never said the cruel thing. He just gave it a place to live. I told her, he said, it was yours. And? She said legally it was in our house. I almost laughed, not because it was funny. Because Lorraine could make even a mixing bowl sound like disputed land. Then he reached for me again, but stopped halfway. Mara, please. Don't leave yet. You wanted to warn me before she did it? I wanted to give it to you before tonight. His voice dropped. I couldn't find where she put it. That was the first new thing he had said that night. Not brave, not enough, but new. My father had tried, quietly and late, to move something out of Lorraine's reach. I hated that it mattered to me. I hated that a tiny part of me still lifted its head for crumbs. Before I could answer, Bethany appeared at the end of the hall with a stack of napkins pressed to her chest. She stopped when she saw our faces. Bethany was younger than me by 6 years, but she had perfected Lorraine's soft version of cruelty early. She never pushed the knife in. She just stood near the person who did, and looked uncomfortable afterward. Mom wants the cake cut, she said. Then her eyes flicked to Dad. Are we doing the thing now? My father closed his eyes. Bethany's cheeks colored. I didn't mean… The bowl? I asked. She looked at me then, really looked, and for one quick second I saw embarrassment before loyalty covered it. Mara, it's not supposed to be like that. Like what? Like an attack. I waited. She shifted the napkins. Mom just thought it would be nice to keep it where people gather. There it was. Not in a house. Not with the daughter of the woman who owned it. Where people gather. As if I lived in a cave. As if my apartment with the thrift store table and the plant I kept alive between hospital shifts did not count as a place. As if family was measured by how many matching chairs you had. Dad said, Bethany. She looked wounded by his tone, which was rich, considering he had saved that tone from me my entire life. What? I didn't plan it. I just said I'd accept it if she gave it to me. Of course you did, I said. Bethany's mouth tightened. You know, this is why Mom worries. Everything turns into a fight with you. I felt something in me go still. Not calm. Still. There is a difference. Calm is peace. Still is when the nurse in me takes over, because blood is on the floor, and nobody else can be trusted not to step in it. I carried the cake in, I said. I served your guests. I let your mother call me the help in front of a room full of people. And you think the fight starts when I speak. Bethany looked toward the dining room, where the party noise had thinned. Someone was listening. Maybe everyone was. Poppy slipped around her mother's hip before Bethany could stop her. She had chocolate frosting on one corner of her mouth, and both hands tucked under her arms like she was trying to keep herself small. Aunt Mara, she whispered, are you going home? Bethany reached down. Poppy, come here. But Poppy didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on me with that serious, watchful look children get when adults are pretending the room isn't on fire. I crouched just enough to meet her without making a show of it. Not yet. She nodded once, relieved, and that small relief cost me. Because Lorraine could take a bowl. She could stage a toast. She could make my father's birthday into a little court where I was supposed to lose gracefully. But Poppy had reached for me earlier with an empty hand, and now she was standing in a hallway waiting to see if I disappeared. Lorraine's voice cut through from the dining room. Bethany, Ray, we're ready. Bethany grabbed Poppy's shoulder, gentler this time but firm. Come on. Poppy let herself be turned, but she looked back at me over her shoulder. I saw then that she was carrying something under her cardigan, pressed flat against her side. A folded paper, maybe. A child's drawing. She caught me noticing and tucked her elbow tighter. My father saw it too. His face changed, just for a second, from fear to recognition. What is that? I asked. Poppy's eyes widened. Bethany didn't hear me, or pretended not to. She guided Poppy into the dining room, and the guests made that bright, expectant sound people make when they're about to witness something they have been told is sweet. Dad leaned close. Mara, he said, barely breathing the word. Whatever she says. Look at Poppy first. Before I could ask him what that meant, Lorraine tapped a spoon against a glass. The room quieted at once. On the sideboard, beside the melting candles and the half-cut cake, sat a square gift wrapped in silver paper. Lorraine rested one hand on top of it like a queen claiming a country, and smiled directly at me. Lorraine did not unwrap the silver package right away. She held it at chest height and let the room settle around her, the way she always did when she wanted people to understand they were not guests anymore. They were witnesses. The kitchen smelled like coffee, frosting, and the burnt edge of the casserole somebody had left too long in the oven. My father stood near the sink with a paper plate in his hand, not eating from it. Poppy was beside the dining room arch, one hand still tucked under her cardigan, watching Lorraine instead of the gift. "I wanted to wait until everyone was here," Lorraine said, and her eyes touched me for half a second, just enough to make sure I knew I counted only as an audience. Ray's birthday felt like the right day to honor what this family is becoming. Bethany smiled, because she had been trained to smile on cue, but it flickered. Mason leaned back against the wall, pretending to check his phone. Two neighbors from church shifted closer. Nobody wanted to miss whatever Lorraine had wrapped in that shining paper. I could have left then. I had my purse on the chair behind me. My car keys were in the outside pocket. I could have walked past the cake I had paid for, past the stack of dirty plates Lorraine had pointed me toward, past my father's lowered head. But Ray's warning kept its hand on the back of my neck. "Look at Poppy first." So I looked at her. Poppy's face had gone pale in the stubborn way children get when they are trying not to cry in front of adults. She was staring at the package like it had a heartbeat. Under her cardigan, the folded thing made a small, square shape against her ribs. When she noticed me looking, she shook her head once. Not no. More like not yet. Lorraine peeled the tape slowly. The paper fell away in neat strips because of course she had wrapped it so it would open beautifully. Inside was a white box, and inside that was my mother's blue glass mixing bowl, nested in tissue paper like it belonged in a museum instead of on a countertop with flour dust in the tiny scratches. Even from across the room, I saw the chip on the rim. I knew that chip. I had put it there when I was 8, dropping a measuring spoon into the bowl too hard while my mother laughed and said, "Well, now it's ours twice." My hand closed around the back of a dining chair. No one saw that part. They saw the bowl catch the overhead light, blue flashing across Lorraine's hands. "This belonged to Ray's first wife," Lorraine said. She did not say my mother. "It's been sitting forgotten in the basement for years, and I thought that was such a shame. Family things should go where they'll be loved, not hoarded for sentimental reasons." The room made the soft, approving sounds people make when they have not heard the knife go in. Bethany's smile came back, wider this time, but her eyes slid toward me and away. Ray took one step forward, then stopped. It was so small, that stopped step, but it hurt more than if he had stayed still. Lorraine turned to Bethany and lifted the bowl. "So I'm giving this to my daughter. For her home. For her table. For the next generation." Poppy made a sound. Not a word. Just air caught in her throat. Bethany heard it. She looked down at her daughter, and for a second the room's performance cracked. "Poppy, honey?" Lorraine's face hardened before her voice did. "This is a grown-up moment." That was when Poppy pulled the folded paper from under her cardigan. It was not a letter. It was a child's drawing, creased and warm from being held against her body. She opened it with both hands, and I saw blue crayon first, a big crooked bowl. A small stick-figure woman with dark hair beside it. A smaller girl beside her. Across the top, in careful second-grade letters, she had written, "Aunt Mara's mom's bowel." Nobody moved. Even Lorraine's hands paused around the glass. Poppy did not hold the drawing up like an accusation. She held it the way children hold things they made with their whole heart, hoping the adults will be kind enough to understand. "Grandpa told me," she said, her voice thin but clear. "He said Mara's mom used it when Mara was little. He said it wasn't lost." My father closed his eyes. Lorraine set the bowl down on the sideboard with a careful click. "Poppy," she said too sweetly, "you misunderstood." "No, I didn't." Poppy's chin trembled. "I asked him because Grandma Lorraine said Aunt Mara didn't need old things, but Grandpa said sometimes old things are how people remember who held them first. There are rooms that go silent because people are bored, and rooms that go silent because everyone has suddenly been given a job they do not want. This was the second kind." The church neighbor who had laughed when Lorraine called me help looked at her shoes. Mason put his phone away. Bethany's face changed slowly, like she was hearing her own house from another room. Lorraine did not look at me. That told me more than anger would have. She looked at Ray. "You discussed this with a child?" Ray opened his eyes. His voice came out rough. She asked me why Mara looked sad in the basement. A strange little heat moved through my chest. Not victory, not yet, something sharper and more dangerous. My father had not defended me when the room was loud. But he had told the truth to the one person Lorraine had forgotten to manage. Lorraine gave a short laugh. This is ridiculous. It's a bowl. Bethany, take it. Bethany reached for it because her mother told her to. Then she stopped with her fingers an inch from the rim. Poppy stepped in front of her, not brave in a clean movie way, but terrified and doing it anyway. Mom, she whispered, that's not ours. Bethany's hand dropped. For the first time all afternoon, Lorraine had no polished line ready. Her mouth tightened. She looked at the neighbors, at Mason, at Ray, and finally at me. I expected her to call me ungrateful. I expected her to tell everyone I had poisoned a child against her. Instead, she smiled in a way I had never seen before, small and private and mean enough to make my skin go cold. Well, she said, if Mara wants to make a scene over kitchenware, she can say so herself. The room turned toward me. Poppy still held her drawing open. The blue bowl sat between Bethany and me, bright under the dining room light. And for once, Lorraine had not handed me a chore. She had handed me the choice she thought I was too trained to take. For 1 second, nobody breathed. Lorraine had built that whole room so I would either explode or shrink. The cake was sweating under the dining room light. The blue bowl sat between Bethany's place setting and mine, like it had been waiting more than 2 decades to be asked the right question. Poppy's drawing lay beside it, crooked and brave, and every adult in that room suddenly had to decide whether a child had better manners than we did. Lorraine smiled at me with all her teeth. Go ahead, Mara. Tell us why you need to ruin your father's birthday. Her voice was soft enough to sound wounded to anyone who wanted an excuse. Tell my daughter she can't have one nice thing from this family. I almost answered the way she wanted. I almost dragged the whole old house into the room. The Christmas cards with my name left off. The hallway photos where I was cropped to an elbow. The years of being told I was too sensitive for noticing what everybody else was trained to ignore. But Poppy was standing there in her party dress, with one hand pressed against the front of her cardigan, watching me like she was waiting to learn what grown women did with pain when there were children nearby. So I looked at Bethany instead. Beth, I said, and my voice sounded calmer than I felt. Do you want it if it has to be taken from me in front of everyone? Bethany's face changed, as if I had slapped the mask off without touching her. She looked at the bowl, then at her mother, then down at Poppy's drawing. Her cheeks were pink, not birthday pink anymore. I didn't know, she said. Lorraine snapped. You knew exactly what this was. Don't act confused because Mara is making a scene. No, Bethany said, quieter. I knew you said it was from the basement. I didn't know it was hers. She corrected herself before Lorraine could. Her mother's. That was the first crack that sounded real. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just one word placed where Lorraine had spent years leaving a blank. Mother, mine. Ray took a step forward, then stopped. Like his own courage had a leash on it. I saw his hands. They were shaking. He had always been best at almost helping, almost calling, almost standing in a doorway and saying, let's not do this, after the damage had already found me. But this time Poppy turned toward him, and the little folded edge of her drawing fluttered when the air vent kicked on. That child had believed him. Now he had to become the kind of person a child thought he was. Lorraine saw it too. She reached for the bowl. Enough. This is ridiculous. Bethany, take your gift. Bethany didn't move. So Lorraine picked it up herself. I don't know if she meant to scare me or just remind the room that she could still control the object if she had lost the story. But that bowl was old, heavier than it looked, and the chip on the rim faced outward. My mother's chip. I remembered being little and touching that chipped spot while she stirred pancake batter, and her saying, "Careful, baby, pretty things can still cut you." The memory came so fast I felt dizzy. Poppy gasped. Grandma. Don't. Lorraine hated being corrected by children more than she hated being caught. Her wrist tightened. The bowl slipped half an inch against her palm. I moved before I thought. Not toward Lorraine's face. Not toward the argument. Toward the bowl. I put both hands under it, steadying the base without pulling. For a breath we were both holding it, Lorraine from above, me from below, and the whole room had to look at the difference. She was gripping it like a trophy. I was holding it like it could break. Let go, she whispered. No, I said. Not loud, not shaking. Not while you're holding it like that. Mason muttered something from near the doorway, and one of Lorraine's cousins made a small, uncomfortable sound, the kind people make when they finally realize neutrality has been taking sides all evening. But I kept my eyes on Lorraine. If I looked away, she would turn it into a tug of war. If I pulled, she would let it fall and say I had done it. I could feel that possibility in my wrists. Then Ray stepped around the table. He did not give a speech. He did not apologize. He did not rescue me in some clean, late, movie version of fatherhood. He simply placed his hand under mine, under the bowl, adding his strength to the bottom where it mattered. Lorraine, he said, put it down. She stared at him like he had spoken a language she did not allow in the house. Ray swallowed. On the table, now. The silence after that was worse than shouting. Lorraine's eyes went shiny. Not with sadness, but calculation. She looked past us toward the guests, measuring what could still be saved. A minute earlier, she had owned the room. Now she was a woman holding a dead woman's bowl over a child's drawing, while her husband told her to stop. There was no graceful way out, and for once, none of us offered her one. Her fingers opened, slowly. Ray and I lowered the bowl together until the glass touched the table with a soft, final tap. That sound went through me harder than any yell could have. I let my hands stay there for one extra second, flat against the cool blue sides, because I needed to know it was safe. Lorraine stepped back and gave a little laugh. Fine. If everyone wants to worship a mixing bowl, be my guest. She turned toward Bethany. I hope you're happy. This is what happens when people reward bitterness. Bethany flinched, but this time she didn't look down. She walked to Poppy, picked up the drawing, and smoothed the crease with her thumb. Mom, she said, don't talk about her like that in front of my daughter. That landed differently than anything I could have said. Lorraine's power had always worked best when people protected her from consequences in the name of peace. Bethany had just named the cost in front of the smallest person in the room. Poppy leaned into her mother's leg, still watching the bowl, and I saw Bethany's hand settle over her shoulder like a promise she had not known she needed to make until that second. I thought the fight was over. That was my mistake. Lorraine's face smoothed out too quickly. She wiped under one eye, though no tear had fallen, and looked straight at Ray. If she takes that bowl, she said, then she can take all of it, every box, every dusty scrap you've kept down there. I want it out of my house tonight. Ray went pale. The basement, my mother's things. Not just the bowl. The boxes I had been told were gone, donated, ruined, misplaced, forgotten. The room seemed to tilt around me, and for the first time all evening, Lorraine's cruelty gave me something other than pain. It gave me a door. I looked at my father, and he looked away before he could stop himself. That was answer enough. Somewhere under our feet, my mother's life had been sitting in cardboard while I had been grieving empty air. Bethany whispered, Mom, what boxes? Lorraine's mouth tightened. She had not meant to say that much. Poppy felt the shift before the rest of us did. She reached for my sleeve with two careful fingers, like I was the fragile thing now. I kept one hand on the blue bowl and turned toward the basement door at the end of the hall. Behind it, the old wooden steps waited in the dark, and this time, no one told me I was imagining what had been hidden there. Lorraine said, all of it, like she was throwing trash at my feet. But the second the words left her mouth, the whole room changed. Nobody laughed. Nobody filled the silence for her. Ray was the first one to move, and that scared me more than Lorraine's threat, because my father had spent most of my life treating movement like a thing that could break him. He set the blue bowl on the dining table with both hands, careful as if my mother could still feel the impact, and said, Mara, come with me. Lorraine snapped. Ray, in that warning voice she used when company was present, but this time he didn't even look back. The basement door was off the kitchen, behind the little wall where Lorraine kept her church cookbooks lined by color. I had walked past that door for years, carrying serving trays, trash bags, coats people had dropped on the floor, and I had never once been allowed down there. Lorraine always said the steps were unsafe. She said there were mice. She said it was damp and ugly, and nothing down there belonged to me. Now Ray opened it, and the smell that came up was not mice or damp. It was cardboard, old detergent, and cedar. It was the smell of things kept, not things forgotten. Bethany followed us with Poppy tucked against her hip. Mom, don't. she said when Lorraine started after us. Lorraine's face sharpened. This is my house. Bethany did not raise her voice. Then act like it. That line stopped Lorraine on the kitchen tile as cleanly as a hand on her chest. For 1 second, I saw the cost of it pass over Bethany's face. She had not just contradicted her mother. She had done it in front of the women from church, in front of Mason, in front of a child who was learning what adults allowed. The basement light flickered twice before it stayed on. Ray went first. I went after him with my palm sliding along the painted wall. Halfway down, I saw the first stack of boxes under the stairs, not hidden behind anything, not buried beneath flood damage, not sealed away in some unreachable corner. They were stacked neatly. Lorraine had not lost them. She had not accidentally mixed them with Christmas decorations. She had looked at them for years, every time she came down for paper towels or a roasting pan. On the top box, in black marker, someone had written my mother's first name. Not miscellaneous. Not old stuff. Her name. I stopped on the last step. My knees did something strange, not buckling exactly, but forgetting their job. Ray reached toward me, then pulled his hand back, as if he understood he had forfeited the right to steady me without asking. There are more, he said. His voice was low. I didn't know she kept them like this. I wanted to believe him. I also wanted to turn and ask him how a man could live above a basement, and not know what grief was doing under his own floorboards. But then Poppy whispered from the stairs, "Is that her?" And I looked where she was pointing. There was a framed photograph leaning sideways against a plastic bin of Easter decorations. Dust had softened the glass, but I knew the woman in it before Ray wiped it with his sleeve. My mother was standing on the back steps of this same house, younger than I ever got to know her, one hand lifted to block the sun. She was wearing a yellow sweater I remembered only from one old dream, or maybe from one of the memories children keep without knowing where they put them. Behind her, half cut off by the frame, was a little girl with crooked bangs. Me. I had been in this house before Lorraine turned it into proof that I did not belong. Lorraine came down 3 steps and stopped where the ceiling dipped low. "Don't make this dramatic," she said. "Most of that is just junk Ray couldn't deal with." Ray looked up at her, and something hard passed through his face. Not rage. Rage would have been easier. This was recognition arriving late and refusing to leave. "You told me her sister came for it," he said. Lorraine's mouth opened, then closed. Bethany's eyes moved to her mother, and I watched a second crack open in the day. The first crack had been the bowl. This one was quieter, but deeper, because there was no crowd big enough for Lorraine to perform her way around it. I knelt in front of the top box. My hands were shaking so badly I could not lift the flap. Poppy wriggled down from Bethany's arms and came to stand beside me. She did not touch the box. She just placed one small hand on the floor, palm flat, copying the way I had braced myself. That almost undid me. Bethany saw it too. She said, "Poppy, come here." But Poppy shook her head once. "Aunt Mara's sad," she said. Not loud, not accusing, just true. The church ladies upstairs went completely still. Inside the first box was not treasure. That was the part that hurt. It was ordinary life. A chipped white mug with a faded peach on it. A hairbrush with 2 dark strands caught near the handle. A stack of recipe cards tied with yarn. A blue cardigan folded around a small tin of buttons. Things too plain to steal and too intimate to throw away. I lifted the cardigan, and a cedar block rolled out onto the concrete with a soft knock. My mother had been protected from moths while I was told there was nothing left of her. Ray sank onto an overturned bucket. He covered his mouth with one hand. I could not take care of his grief. That had been my job too many times, making his silence comfortable so mine would not offend him. So I kept looking. Under the cardigan was a small cloth pouch, and inside it was a small brass key on a red string. I knew that string. I had worn it around my neck in 2nd grade because I was always losing things, and my mother told me a key was not only for doors. It was so I would remember I could come home. I held it up, and Ray made a sound like my name had caught in his throat. Lorraine came the rest of the way down then, fast. "Give me that," she said. Not because it was valuable, because I was holding it without asking. Bethany stepped between us before Ray could. She was shoeless, still in the nice blouse she had worn for the party, standing on the basement floor like she had crossed a border she could not uncross. "No," she said. Lorraine stared at her daughter as if she had become a stranger in the time it took to descend 12 steps. Move. Bethany's voice trembled, but she stayed there. You've moved enough things. That was when Mason called from the top of the stairs, awkward and frightened. Ray? There's a man at the door asking for Mara. My name traveled down into the basement and made every head turn. I did not know any man who would come to Lorraine's house looking for me. Then Mason added, he says he's from Willow Creek Storage. Lorraine's face lost color so quickly that even Poppy noticed. Bethany looked from her mother to me, and in that narrow basement, surrounded by my mother's boxed-up life, I understood there was still another door Lorraine had not meant to open. Mason's words seemed to pull the air out of the basement. A man from Willow Creek Storage was at the door asking for me, and Lorraine's face changed so fast I almost missed it. Not anger first. Fear. A sharp, private flash of it, like she had heard a floorboard crack under her own foot. Then she gathered herself and said, nobody is here for Mara. But she said my name too quickly, and that made Ray look at her. I still had the little key on the red string in my palm. It had warmed there until it felt alive. Bethany stood beside Poppy with one hand on her shoulder, and Poppy had stopped crying, but her eyes were wide and fixed on me. I wanted to tell her to go upstairs. I wanted to tell all of us to go back 10 minutes and become people who could eat cake and pretend a blue bowl was just a bowl. Instead, I walked past Lorraine, up the basement stairs, and every step made that red string brush my wrist. The man at the front door wore a tan jacket darkened by rain at the shoulders. Behind him, parked at the curb, was a white box truck with Willow Creek Storage painted on the side in green letters. He was older than Ray, with a trimmed gray beard, and one of those faces that looked tired of being asked to choose sides. He glanced behind me into the hallway, where Lorraine had followed so close I could feel her heat. Mara Ellis? He asked. That's me, I said. Lorraine moved around me. There's been a mistake. I'm Lorraine Whitaker. You spoke with me. The man looked at her. Then at me. Then down at my hand. The red string was hanging between my fingers. His eyes stopped there. No mistake, he said. I was told if the woman with that key was here, I was to put eyes on her before anything left my truck. Lorraine laughed once. It sounded like a plate cracking. That is ridiculous. You are delivery people. You don't get involved in family matters. No, ma'am, he said. I don't. That's why I'm standing on the porch. Ray came up behind us, slow, like every stare had cost him. The storage man saw him, and his mouth tightened. Ray. Ray looked down. Eddie. That one word did more than all the shouting in the dining room. They knew each other. Not close, maybe, but enough. Enough that Ray could not fold himself back into silence without being seen doing it. Eddie wiped rain from his eyebrow with his thumb. I called the house number 3 times this week. A woman told me the unit was abandoned, that the remaining contents could be destroyed if they weren't worth hauling. Then this morning Ray, whose name is on the unit, called and told me to bring the small cedar chest here first and get Mara Ellis to sign off. He nodded toward the truck. When I saw the tag on the chest, I drove it myself. Lorraine's voice dropped. You had no right. That chest has a lock I'm not cutting, Eddie said. And it has a name burned into the underside. Not written, burned, like somebody meant it to last. My mouth had gone dry. What name? He looked at me, and his face softened in a way I was not ready for. Yours. For a second, the hallway disappeared. I was back in the basement with the photograph, looking at my mother's shoulder, the blur of my own small hand. All those years Lorraine had made me feel like I had wandered into their house by accident, like I had no root there and no claim. And now there was something heavy enough to need a truck. Something my mother had marked for me so deeply that rain and time and other people's hands had not erased it. Lorraine stepped toward the door. I paid that bill. For years. Do you hear me? I paid it. Whatever is in that truck belongs to this household. Bethany answered before I could. Then why were you destroying it? Lorraine turned on her, but Poppy slipped out from under Bethany's hand and came to me. She did not say anything. She just put her small fingers around 2 of mine, the ones not holding the key. The whole porch went quiet around that tiny choice. Ray cleared his throat. Lorraine. His voice was rough. Stop. She stared at him as if he had slapped her. Don't you dare perform for him. I'm not performing, he said. I'm remembering. That landed strangely, not like an apology, like something cracking open under pressure. Eddie looked away, giving him room, but Ray did not take much. He pointed at the key in my hand. Your mother tied that string on because you kept losing things. She said if it was red, you'd find it. She made me promise. He stopped, and I saw his jaw work. She made me promise you would get what she put away. I waited for more, but he did not bury it in excuses. That was almost worse. There was no story long enough to cover the years. There was only a promise, broken so completely that even Lorraine looked smaller standing next to it. Why didn't you? I asked. Ray's eyes filled, but he kept them on mine. Because after she died, I let this house become louder than my promise. Lorraine made a sound of disgust. Oh, beautiful, very moving. Are we all supposed to clap because Ray found a spine after all these years? No, I said. My voice surprised me. It was calm. Nobody claps. Eddie shifted on the porch. I need to know what you want done with the chest. I can take it back to Willow Creek and hold the unit until Monday. Or I can leave the chest here if you open it and claim it. Lorraine snapped. She claims nothing in my house. Bethany stepped between Lorraine and the door. Not dramatically. Not like she wanted credit. She just stood there, in her socks on the hall runner, with cake frosting still dried near her sleeve from the party that had become this. Then it doesn't come into your house, she said. Poppy squeezed my fingers. Ray looked at me, and this time he did not tell me what would be easier. Eddie waited in the rain. The truck hummed at the curb, its back doors shut, holding whatever my mother had saved from the life Lorraine tried to make vanish. I lifted the red string so the key turned once in the porch light. Take me to the chest, I said. Eddie led me to the storage truck, like he was walking me into a room where somebody was still sleeping. The cedar chest sat just inside the open back, low and dark, with one corner rubbed pale from years of hands. Lorraine came down the driveway behind us fast enough that her shoes slapped the concrete. That does not leave my property, she said. Eddie did not look at her. He looked at me, waiting. My throat closed before I could speak, so I nodded. He turned the chest slightly, and there, burned into the underside in careful, uneven letters, was my name. For a second, nobody moved. The whole yard went quiet except for Poppy breathing through her mouth beside Bethany. Then Lorraine made one mistake, she said. That name wasn't visible when I saw it. Ray's head turned toward her so slowly it scared me more than if he had shouted. Eddie's hand stayed on the lid. Bethany whispered, Mom. Lorraine's face changed, not into guilt exactly, but into the panic of someone who had reached for the wrong drawer in front of everybody. Ray stepped between Lorraine and the truck. He was still holding the blue bowl against his ribs. Like if he let go of it, the day would fall apart. When did you see it? He asked. Lorraine folded her arms. Ray, don't be dramatic. He did not move. When? She looked past him at the neighbors' windows, at Mason near the porch, at Bethany, at me. For years she had made me feel like the extra person in every room. Now she was counting witnesses and finding no empty chair to hide in. I slid the red string key into the lock. It turned on the first try, and I opened the chest before she could answer. The smell came out first, cedar and old cotton, and the faint sweet dust of a closed-up summer. Inside were things I could understand without anybody explaining them. My mother's cream sweater folded around tissue, 2 chipped Christmas ornaments I remembered from before Lorraine, a stack of recipe cards tied with thread, and a little metal tin full of buttons. On top lay a square of quilted fabric, unfinished at one edge. My mother had sewn 3 names into it, hers, Ray's, mine. There was no blank space waiting for someone else to decide if I belonged. I picked up the quilt square and pressed my thumb over my own name. I thought I would cry. I didn't. Something in me went very still. Lorraine said, "Sentimental clutter doesn't change anything." Ray turned on her then, and his voice was not loud, but it had weight I had never heard from him. "It changes me," Lorraine gave a short laugh. "You don't mean that." He set the blue bowl down on the truck floor with careful hands. "I do. I let you make my daughter a guest in her own grief. I let you call it order. I let you call it moving on. I'm done letting you name things." Lorraine stared at him like he had spoken a language she refused to learn. "And what, Ray? You're going to throw away your marriage over boxes?" Bethany stepped forward before he could answer. She put one hand on Poppy's shoulder and one hand on the cedar chest. "No," she said. "He's finally not throwing away Mara." That was the line that broke the old arrangement. Not because it was poetic, because Bethany said it like a person making plans, not like a daughter begging permission. Ray took a spare house key from his pocket. He held it out to me, But this time he did not ask me to take it as a memory or a symbol or a soft thing that would keep everybody comfortable. Your mother wanted you to have a way back in, he said. I can't give you the years. I can give you the door now, Lorraine snapped. This is my home. Ray looked at the porch, the curtains, the flower pots she had arranged like proof of ownership. It's my house too, he said. And Mara's things leave today. After that, Lorraine, you and I are going to decide what kind of home this is. If you can't live in one where my daughter is welcome, then you won't live in this one with me. No one applauded. Real life almost never gives you that clean sound. Eddie simply climbed into the truck and lifted one end of the chest. Ray took the other. Bethany grabbed a basement box before Lorraine could touch it, and Poppy carried the little tin of buttons with both hands. Solemn as a priest. I walked beside them with the quilt square against my chest. Lorraine stayed on the driveway, smaller than I had ever seen her, not because she had shrunk, but because I had stopped standing below her. We did not fix our family that afternoon. Ray and I had years of silence sitting between us, and an apology, even a real one, could not sweep it off the floor in one motion. But when the chest was loaded into my car, he did not ask me to leave anything behind to keep peace. He touched the lid once and said, "I'll bring the rest to you." I said, "No, we'll bring it together." He nodded, and that was enough for that day. A week later, the cedar chest sat under the front window of my apartment, not as a shrine, not as evidence, just as mine. I put the blue bowl on top because Ray insisted I take it, and I dropped the red string key inside it. That evening, when the heat clicked on, one loose cedar shaving lifted from the chest corner and stuck to the damp ring my water glass had left on the bowl.